Blog Talk Radio.
Warning, the following program may include profane language, controversial viewpoints, and perspectives on the true nature of reality so far removed from the status quo, they'll make your head spin like a top. Young children, corporate executives, and religious fundamentalists should turn away now. Marhaba, my sisters and brothers. Welcome to Extraordinary Year. I'm Tim Bravo, and I thank you for joining us tonight. T-minus 93 days until December 21st, 2012. Ladies and gents, when this program first came into being, back at the beginning of this year, there was a story about reality that I wanted to communicate to our audience. And I made a list of people that I thought were best equipped to explain some of the more pertinent concepts. One of the first names on that list was Michael Talbot. He's the author of a book called The Holographic Universe. Now, I learned about that book in the writings of our beloved David Wilcock, and went and searched it out and read it, and oh my God, this is a book that should be required reading in the schools. And that's just one man's opinion. So anyway, I wanted to interview Michael Talbot, and when I tried to track him down for the interview, just imagine how disappointed I was to learn he passed on back in 1992. So I mentioned Talbot, his book, and its concepts a couple of times on the show, and have had to leave it at that since until this past weekend. What happened this past weekend? Well, Michael Talbot came back to life and phoned me up saying he wanted to do the interview. Just kidding. No, what actually happened was I contacted a medium who claims to channel Michael Talbot, and that he wouldn't stop talking about coming on this show because he had something very important to say. Sorry, just kidding again. Although I know some of you probably believe that is actually possible, and I'm right there with you, and Michael Talbot believes that would be possible as well. No, but guys, what actually happened, being for reals this time, what happened was I ran across audio of an interview that Michael Talbot gave before he died. And of course, it's amazing. So I decided, hey, you know what? I can do the interview anyway. This is somebody I always wanted to talk with, and I found all this amazing stuff that he's had to say that probably nobody out there listening has ever heard him say. So I'm thinking, thanks to the insightful and eloquent questions by licensed clinical psychologist and host of Thinking Aloud, Jeffrey Mishlove, who conducted the interviews that the audio is taken from, and who I hope won't begrudge us a bit of fun. That's what this interview is for me. It's me getting to do the interview I wanted to do, and so we're taking some license here, and we want to give due credit to Jeffrey Mishlove and Thinking Aloud, and thank them for delivering this very important, easy to understand perspective on how our reality truly works. So, without further ado, please welcome to Extraordinary Year the late great author of the Holographic Universe, Michael Talbot.
Nice to be with you.
Welcome to the show. So, when you say that we live in a holographic universe, or that the universe is holographic, what exactly does that mean?
In a nutshell, that reality may be more plastic and changeable like an image. It has a couple of other implications, one of which is that a hologram has an unusual property. If you take a piece of photographic film that has a holographic image encoded in it, that means that you cannot see the image with your naked eye. You have to reconstruct the image, you have to shine a laser through it. So if you have an image of a rose in the film, shine a laser through the rose, you'll get a three-dimensional image of the rose on the other side. You cut that film in half, shine a laser through each piece, you'll get a whole rose out of each piece, which is a very unusual property and sort of boggles the imagination at first. Cut it in four, you get four roses. Cut it in eight, you get 8 roses. So the universe is a hologram. It means, as William Blake said, that quite literally you can find the universe in a grain of sand, that every portion of the universe contains some semblance of the whole universe.
Well, that's very cool. It's a very cool theory. How did it come into being? Who put this together?
It was developed by two men, University of London physicist named David Bohm, who was a former protege of Einstein, and a Stanford University neurophysiologist named Carl Pribram. And they worked independently. Pribram was studying memory and found that there's evidence that the brain operates holographically. And Bohm was studying subatomic physics and found that on the subatomic level, the fabric of reality seems to possess properties that are reminiscent of a hologram. So if you put those two ideas together, that our brain seems to be holographic and the universe is holographic, it suggests that maybe it's compelling evidence that the universe may be a kind of hologram, not that it's literally a hologram, but that it's a good metaphor or way of understanding the universe.
So for those who may not be picking up what you're putting down, how does the holographic nature of reality, how does that holographic nature apply to reality? Or how can we see how it functions in our reality?
Reality in a hologram can manifest in two ways, as a concrete image or as this sort of indecipherable blur of energy. And an analogy to this is when you're watching Johnny Carson on your television set, that's really, his image is encoded in two ways. One is as the concrete image on the TV set, one is as the blur of radio waves permeating the living room. And if the universe is a hologram of some sense, in some way, it suggests that there may be two very drastically different levels to reality, that the concrete reality we see, when we look at the trees and the clouds and everything like that, are just one way that reality manifests, and that at some deep level there's a level of reality where everything dissolves into an ocean of energy that is holographically interconnected, where every portion of the universe is contained in every tiny area of the universe.
Okay, very cool. So what made you decide to write this book anyway? I mean, when did you set out to write a book exploring the holographic nature of reality?
I started writing it years before I heard of the holographic model, because the model of reality that's in the book that is implied by the holographic idea is the model of reality that I'd arrived at because of my experiences. I'd had a lot of first-hand encounters with the plasticity of reality. A recent one is a good example of just how extraordinary some of these plastic events have been. I have a little Jade Buddha on my desk that my mother gave me, and it is set in gold, and she came to visit, and I think it's significant that this was a time in my life I was going through a rather rough period and basically in need of having some reassurance that miracles were possible in the universe. And when she saw the Jade Buddha sitting on my desk, she said, "Oh, I remember giving you this." And she picked it up, and I stood by her as we watched it. And as we looked down at the Buddha, there was a little explosion of red light, and a sphere of red light expanded out from the Buddha. Mm-hmm. And after it was gone, a red stone had appeared in the Buddha's head. And I don't know if it was a ruby or a rhinestone. I've been kind of afraid to have it tested. I don't know how I'd respond if it had been a miraculous rhinestone appearance. But my mother, who's always been kind of like Gladys Kravitz on Bewitched when it comes to these things, kind of giggled nervously and said, "Gee, I don't remember that stone being in the Buddha's head before." And I said, "But Mom, didn't you just notice something really amazing?" And she said, "Well, it looked like there was an explosion of red light, and a sphere of red light expanded away from the Buddha." And I said, "Well, yeah, that's what I saw." And she said, "Well, that can't be. And my sister was visiting and had actually worn the Buddha on a pendant. Mm-hmm. And so I said, "Well, she had told me that my sister wore it." I said, "Well, let's call her in and see if she remembers it being there," because even I who experienced these things, you still have this sort of gnawing skepticism, gosh, this can't be. Can reality really be this plastic? And so I said to my mother, "Now don't tell her that the stone materialized. Let's
in front of our eyes."
Right. Let's see if she just notices it on her own. Yeah. And my mother, bless her heart, when my sister comes in, she goes, okay, I won't tell her. But the moment she came in the door, she goes, "Pam, the stone just appeared out of nowhere in this Buddha's head." So we didn't have, a sort of straight scientific approach to it. But that's just one example. There have been many. I talked about the Poltergeist. I grew up having all sorts of precognitive visions of the future, which at a very early age taught me that time wasn't as linear as we thought, and things that we don't even have sort of scientific pigeonholes to put in, like a UFO encounter, and encounters occasionally with beings that appear to be spirits. I'm not quite sure what they are, but beings that aren't physical beings, and things that were just part of the natural warp and weft of my life have always been. And as I say, it really came as a shock to me to discover that other people didn't know reality was plastic, and that's why the holographic idea excited me so.
And I understand that's not the only supernatural sort of happening that you experienced. You just talked about Poltergeist. You had some pretty interesting phenomena happening even from an early age, right?
Yeah, very much so. I've always been very interested in science, but I also grew up with a lot of very unusual experiences, not the least of which is that I grew up in a house with a poltergeist haunting. So I had all kinds of examples of psychokinesis, of objects moving about on their own when I was growing up. It really was a strange in the sense that for me it was normal, and I had to learn that it was abnormal, and rather painful learning. And as I grew up, and my friends would find it very strange that these things would occur. And one of the things that Bohm says, because Bohm addresses the topic of psychokinesis, is again, we may be mistaken to try to approach psychokinesis by saying what energy is leaving the brain to move the object, because as Bohm says, there's no division, that we are as connected to that object as borderless. We're a continuum with the object as the patterns in a carpet. For us to move the object may be, as Bohm says, just an act of resonance, of realizing that there's no division between us.
Wow. I mean, wow. See, that's the sort of thing the greater majority of us, we may hear about stuff like that, but few people actually experience things like that. So you seem to have been sort of prepped to understand this subject matter pretty early on, and you could just kind of take it in stride. So when did all this poltergeist activity actually start?
The poltergeist, I always thought the poltergeist started when I was 5 years old, and it started raining gravel down on the roof of my family's home at night. And at the time, we didn't think this was paranormal. No one knew what was going on. I grew up in Michigan. We lived in a very rural area in the midst of the woods. My father would go out with a shotgun because he thought someone must be doing it, and he could never find any evidence that someone was doing it. He'd shoot the gun off into the air. And in the morning, he'd go up and sweep several shovelfuls of gravel off the roof. And then things became very definitely paranormal when whatever this manifestation was went into the house. One of its favorite things to do was to throw the vacuum cleaner around. You didn't always see it. Most often you didn't. My mother, if she were vacuuming and turned the vacuum cleaner off and left it in one corner of the room and would leave the room, you'd hear it crash and go back to the room and be in the opposite side of the room. Occasionally you would see things. I saw on one occasion a glass all of a sudden just came swooping through the room from no apparent source. The windows were closed. There was no one there who could have thrown it. The poltergeist was also fond of throwing, strangely enough, pieces of drift glass and broken beer bottles or pop bottles you find worn smooth on the beach. And once in my New York apartment, because the poltergeist followed me wherever I moved until I was in my early 20s, I actually saw one of these things materialize. I was just sort of daydreaming, looking up near the ceiling, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this strange little brown thing appeared, and as I looked at it, it came zooming down at me, hit me in the chest, dropped to the floor, and it was one of these pieces of glass. And so these were, extraordinary things, but at the same time, I and my family became so accustomed to them. I have two sisters that we'd be playing, because another thing the poltergeist would do was stomp all over. It'd stomp up the stairs, down the stairs to the room. You hear bang, 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 bang. And if we were playing, it got so, if we heard something stomp up the stairs and glanced over to the stairs and there was nothing there, we'd just go back to playing. It was so mundane a part of our existence. And you said they did have negative aspects. It wasn't all positive. That's true, because one of the things that I discovered and has caused me to believe that the poltergeist was an unconscious psychic projection of mine is that it was always colored by my moods. And most of the time I was in a good mood and it was mischievous. It would do silly things, like one morning I woke up with dried spaghetti noodles all over my chest and no explanation. I lived alone, and unless a burglar broke in, boiled some noodles, and threw them on my chest. I don't know where they came from, and I have no history of sleepwalking or anything like that. Another instance, it took all of my socks, draped them over the plants in my house. Silly things like that. But if I were in a bad mood, if I were going through some sort of rough time in my life, the poltergeist became nasty. And there were a few occasions, not many, where stigmata-like bites would appear in my hands. A couple of times, needles or metal objects that were halfway between nail and needle would appear out of nowhere, just zoom into my flesh. This only happened twice. Mm-hmm. And things like that. So you could construe those as negative, but on the other hand, I view them as positive because I learned so much from them.
Well, there are a lot of people who would hear stories like yours about poltergeist activity and believe that what you're actually describing is the work of the devil or, some kind of demon.
That's true, and one of the things that I've learned from it is when these negative things were happening, there were occasions, even though I'd had lengthy experience with this poltergeist, that I'd start to think, oh my gosh, maybe I'm being demonically attacked. When I believed that, it started to manifest even more as a demonic attack. But when I would sort of come to my senses and go, no, I know that I can see the emotional reason that this is manifesting in this way, and go, okay, I'm going to stop this, I'm going to have a positive frame of mind, all the negative stuff would stop. I always had control, but if I relinquished that control and allowed my beliefs to go into some interpretation, it's a demon, it's a this, it's a that, then it would get me. Another instance where when I lived in my New York apartment, where I was playing piano at night. I had the lights off. I was playing in the dark. I live on the ground floor, and the piano is situated so that the back of the piano is toward a window. And as I was sitting there playing away, all of a sudden there was an intense burst of light in my face. It was like a flash bulb went off right in my face. And my first just sort of visceral reaction to it was, oh my gosh, a truck has come off the road and is driving through my window. So I literally threw myself over the piano, thinking that I'm about to be killed by this truck or whatever. And after I sort of regained my my senses and stood up, I looked back at the window. There was no sign of what had caused this light, and I thought, well, that is strange. And I turned back around, and as I looked in the room, there was what looked like a luminous soap bubble about 3 feet in diameter hovering in the air. And it sounds strange, but it terrified me, because people go, what's so scary about a luminous soap bubble? But it was so unexpected and yet so real. And I started moving my eyes from side to side to see if it was an after image on my retina. I started blinking to see if it would go away. And it was as real as the tables and the chairs, and there was a distinct sort of feeling of evil coming from it. And I started to run out of the room, and then I caught myself, and I thought, because I'm basically just an extremely curious person by nature, and I thought, if I run out of the room, I'm always going to wonder what this thing was and what would have happened had I stayed. So I really summoned my courage, and I stopped, and I addressed it. I said, I want you to know you just scared the daylights out of me, but I want to know why you're here and what you are. And when I said this bubble, which is hovering in the air, backed up, and somehow I knew that the fact that it had backed up, that it had wanted to scare me, and it had backed up. Now, this bubble appearing had been presaged by a number of very negative poltergeist phenomena. I didn't know what was going on. The bubble was only there for maybe a minute or two, but it seemed like an eternity at the time. Then the bubble left the room, hit a door, and sort of burst and sparkles and was gone. But distinctly negative. I knew it was a negative presence. A couple of days later, a friend called me, and I had not told her about the experience or anything. And she said, Michael, I have a letter that I think you should read. And it turned out I had just moved to New York from Michigan. I'd attended Michigan State University. And there was a group of people there that were really only acquaintances of mine. They weren't that important in my life, but they were into black magic. And somehow they had fancied, which was totally their fantasy, not mine, that I was some sort of magician and that I was attacking them. And so they were doing group meditations and casting spells to get me. But what that taught me is that I realized, because I still think I was in part feeding this phenomena with my own psychic energy, is that I was not shielding myself. Because what happened when I learned this, while it was going on, I was so interested, I allowed it to happen because I wanted to see where it was going. I wondered what the bubble was. I didn't say, okay, get out of my reality. But as soon as I found out what they were doing, I said, okay, all of this stops now. And just through an act of will, this will not go this direction. And as soon as I put forth that act of will, all of these things, the negativity ceased, and the poltergeist resumed its harmless aspect. And what that taught me is that, I'm sometimes asked, do you think people can cast spells or can exert an outward influence to you? And I think that our will is always, it's what our will determines. But you also have to be conscious. You have to sort of shield yourself. And I have learned that I have developed a strong belief that I'm protected, so that my unconscious doesn't believe that I'm not protected and allow these things to occur. And when you do that, you are protected.
Adding to the list of naysayers, beyond the religious fundamentalists who might accuse you of trafficking with the devil, there is another segment of our society that looks at the world from a very pragmatic, empirical, scientific point of view. These are the folks who hadn't had such experiences as yours, who believe they can't touch it, see it, hear it, taste it, that you're obviously just crazy. So, Michael, did you ever think, hey, I must be going crazy?
I don't anymore. I never seriously thought I was going crazy, because I'm very emotionally healthy, mentally healthy, and these things have always been positive in my life, have always assisted me, and have always been a good thing, helped me survive. And those people who don't know, there were many years when I didn't tell people I had these experiences, and no one thought I was crazy. And, they might have had I told them the experiences, but the rest of my life has always been, I'm a very sort of ordinary person, except for those things. And I think, that craziness is, if you have an experience of a non-ordinary reality, that's not evidence of craziness. Craziness is if you have some sort of pathological problem, something that's destructive to your health or well-being, and I've never had that.
Well, in talking about sanity and insanity and brain type of stuff. One half of the holographic model duo, Pribram, was a neurologist, and he developed an idea of not just reality as a hologram, but the brain itself, right?
Pribram was working under a very famous neurophysiologist named Carl Lashley, and it was at a time when it was believed that memory was stored in a specific spot in the brain, and there was something called the proverbial grandmother cell, that there was literally a cell in your brain that contained the memory of your grandmother, of what you knew about your grandmother. And so they did a rather gruesome series of experiments for animal lovers, but it came out with some very profound information. They took rats and they taught them how to run mazes, and then they would surgically remove various portions of the brain, Pribram and his mentor, Carl Lashley. The reasoning being that if they could remove a portion of the brain and the rat could no longer run the maze, they found the area of the brain where the rat's memory of the maze running ability was encoded. Now, every time they removed a different portion of the brain, they discovered that they could never remove the memory of how to run the maze. They could impair the rat's ability so it might limp through the maze, but they couldn't remove it. And really, surgeons had known this for a while, doctors had known this for a while, because when people have head injuries, they don't forget half of the alphabet or half of their family or half of a novel they've read. They have global memory impairment where their entire memory may be hazy. But memories don't seem to be stored in our heads in the same way that books are stored on a shelf. And it wasn't until the 60s when Pribram encountered the holographic model that says that the whole is contained in every part that he said, aha, this may be what's going on in the brain. Specifically, because a hologram is made out of interference patterns, the hologram that you see, that we talked about earlier is made out of the interference pattern of laser light, but it can be made out of the interference patterns of any kind of energy, electromagnetic energy, electricity, X-rays even. And so Pribram said, since our synapses are constantly giving off electrical impulses, these are like proverbial pebbles dropping into the sort of electromagnetic pool of our brain. They're sending out ripples that are constantly crisscrossing. And he believes that's what the brain hologram, that's how we think and how we remember is through that hologram inside the head. I have to say that I differ a little with Pribram, because Pribram thinks that the brain, as I said, that it's the electrical interference patterns in the brain that is a brain hologram. I'm kind of a mystic because, at a young age I had an out-of-body experience where I left my body, and it became quite apparent to me while I was having this experience that I was thinking, but my brain was back in my body, which I could see in my bed. I knew it wasn't just a dream because I floated out over the ground outside my family's house, and I saw a book lying on the ground, and it was a book by the French short story writer Guy de Maupassant. And the next day, a neighbor said, by the way, Michael, I lost a library book by Guy de Maupassant. Have you seen it? There was the book. And I'm still very scientifically oriented. I want to understand the world in scientific terms. But it was really the first time that I sort of had to confront the difference between my spiritual beliefs that we can survive our bodily death and this deeply held belief, scientific belief of mine that it's the brain that's doing the thinking. And I realized I had a kind of epiphany where I thought, it isn't the brain that's doing the thinking. So I'm not entirely certain that it's just the electromagnetic interference patterns, because those obviously would perish when the brain perishes. I think there might be some subtler energy that we haven't discovered with our technology that's involved in this also.
Now, I understand you said that the placebo effect, that we all know so well, that actually plays into this theory as supportive evidence, right?
Pribram, as I said, says that we're thinking with holograms inside our head, and that out there exists something that's more akin to the radio waves in the room from which your TV gets the image. So in essence, we're kind of conscious TV sets. And what we think is reality when we look out here is really just the image on the TV set inside our mind, but doesn't exist out there. And Pribram says this is why there's all kinds of evidence that we seem to respond more to the models of reality in our head than out there. In the Holographic Universe, I give an example of a psychologist who did a study where he took soldiers and marched them all the same distance, but he told some they marched, like he marched them all 30 miles or 20 miles, but told some they marched 10, some they marched 20, some they marched 30. But they all marched the same distance. At the end, he took physiological readings and discovered that physiologically they responded not to the actual mileage that they had marched, but to what they had been told, the model of reality that they assumed they had, the reality in their heads. And in medicine, people have used this application of the holographic idea that we respond to the model of reality to say this may be why we respond more to the placebos, to fake drugs. There's a very famous example of a fellow who had lymphatic cancer, tumors the size of oranges all throughout his body. His doctor basically thought he had about 3 days left to live. the fellow heard about a new drug called crebiozin and said, "You've got to give this to me." And the doctor said, "Well, frankly, I don't think you have long to live, and this drug takes several weeks to take effect." The man implored him, and the doctor gave in sort of as an act of pity. He gave the man crebiozin, and 3 days later, the man's tumors melted, as the doctor put it, like snowballs in a hot stove, completely gone out of his body, faster than the strongest radiation treatment could have melted them away. The man is up and around, walking around his hospital room, resumes his normal life, seems to be completely cancer-free. Several months down the line, he reads an article saying crebiozin isn't that effective. Boom, 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 all his tumors come back. He's back in the hospital. The doctor starts to realize that maybe it wasn't the drug that cured the man, but the man's belief. So he lies to the man, and he says, "Those articles are wrong. Crebiozin is effective, and in fact, I've got an even more potent version of it." He injects just salt water into the man's veins. Again, the man's tumors melt away. He resumes his normal life. Unfortunately, many months down the line, he reads final studies on crebiozin saying it's completely ineffective. Boom, 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 his tumors come back and he dies. But the bottom line is somehow this man had the ability to access some deep level of healing himself. It wasn't the drug, because salt water worked just as well as this alleged drug. And so again, here's an instance where he responded to the model of reality in his head, this deep belief that this drug would heal him, even though he wasn't even receiving the drug at a certain point in his treatment. And his body responded in kind. And that, to me, is the most exciting aspect of the holographic idea. And there are countless examples of it. There's a study of a new chemotherapy in England where they took a group of cancer patients. Half the patients they gave the drug, half the patients they gave a placebo, a fake. No one knew who was receiving the real drug or not. They told all the patients, "This is a very toxic drug, may cause you to lose your hair." 30% of the people receiving just the fake lost their hair. And when I first heard this, I immediately thought, oh my gosh, about every donut that I'd ever eaten in my life, and thought, oh, this is really bad for me, that I may be responding to the model of reality more than the nutritional aspects of the donut. I'm not saying throw out nutritional knowledge, but I now know that, like, when I try to eat a healthy diet, but if I eat a candy bar, I no longer tell myself this is killing me. I bless everything that goes into my body, and I say this will only make me better, even though I another part of me knows that I don't want to eat nothing but candy bars. But I tell myself that everything that happens to me is affecting me in a positive way, not a negative way, because I know of the value of this, of doing this. And the analogy that I use is the anthropologist Gregory Bateson was in New Guinea, where they have they use for a currency these huge stone coins. And so whenever a major financial transaction would take place, they'd have to move one of these amazingly heavy stone coins from one community to another. During one of these events, one of these stone coins sank to the bottom of the ocean. And the fellow who was shipping it to another fellow said, "Well, everyone knows where it is. It's there down at the bottom of the ocean. It belongs to you now. No one's going to get it." The guy thought about it. He said, "Okay, it's my stone coin now." And when he made a financial transaction that necessitated moving the stone coin, instead of moving it, he said, "Well, now it belongs to you. Everyone knows it's down there at the bottom of the ocean." And I think that's what we've got to do with belief systems. They continue to use the same mode of currency, but without carrying the weight of the stone coin. We've got to use our nutritional knowledge without really affecting and impacting the infinite self. We've got to carry the stone coin around without the weight.
Okay, so getting back to the universe as a whole, if the entire universe can be found in a grain of sand, literally, if the universe itself is truly just an elaborate sort of hologram, then we all really are part of just one thing. Is there other evidence you know of that points to this, the interconnectedness or oneness of all creation?
The UFO phenomenon is a classic example where it just doesn't seem to fit a purely objective explanation. There are thousands and thousands of UFO experiences every year. Many of them take a very absurd form, and it just doesn't seem possible that we could be visited by thousands and thousands of extraterrestrials behaving so absurdly all the time. And yet the evidence is very substantive that there's something going on. I'm not the first. Many people have looked at this and said, gosh, there seems to be a psychological quality to these things, and yet they seem to be real. And I believe I've coined the term omnijective, that the universe is all omnijective. It's neither subjective nor objective, that everything possesses qualities that we associate with both. And the UFO phenomenon, if you look at it, it can almost, I believe, can be interpreted like a dream. There are metaphors and symbols that it speaks in the language, what Erich Fromm called the forgotten language, the language of the psyche, this symbolic language of the dreams. And in fact, all of the mystical experiences I've had, instead of looking for them and going, this is an angel, this is a ghost, this is a spirit, I look at them, I go, this is real, and other people have seen it. But what is its psychological meaning? What is it meant to teach me? How is it a projection of my consciousness my psyche and perhaps the psyche of those who have witnessed it with me.
So you're saying when we see something we would call a UFO, or maybe a transparent human form in a hallway at night, or balls of light bouncing around an apartment, you're saying we should resist the urge to classify it, to pigeonhole it, give it a name.
I've, for example, had a few years back had an encounter with the spirits of several wolves that appeared that I could see through their bodies. I mean, several wolves appeared in my apartment. I could see through them. They were there for about 10 minutes. And this was an experience that I might easily go, well, these are ghosts, these are power animals, these are demons. But I hold my judgment open. I don't know what they are, but I know that these things are possible. And I think it's important not to jump to conclusions because we may miss the larger picture.
Michael Talbot, it's been an honor. Thanks for joining us this evening.
My pleasure.
So there you have it, gang. That's my little fun time with Michael Talbot. I just thought that what he has to say, and the fact that he said it way back at obviously 1992 or before, because that's when he died. I'm not sure the date of the actual interview, but these are things that need to be talked about now, and he was talking about them then. And if you really look into it, I highly recommend this book. Go check out the Holographic Universe. Go buy it used for some cheap money and read it, and it'll be one of the most valuable books on your shelf, even if you pay $2.34 for it. Because it makes things easy, kids. Go read that book, and your understanding, your ability to see how it all fits together might improve vastly if you go check out that book, The Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot. And what he talked about, he and Jeffrey Mishlove in their interview is, I mean, some of it was in the book, but it was really taking the book for granted. Basically, they started with the book and went beyond it. So I highly recommend checking out that book. Go to the library. You don't have to spend anything on it. You might be able to find it. That'd be cool. But I highly recommend it. So we've obviously got some time left. Wasn't sure how long that was going to take. Didn't really put together anything too formal for the rest of the evening. So now might be a good time to sound off. Anybody out there want to call in? You got something going on? If you want to talk about something that's been going on this week, at any point, just give us a little ring-a-ling. But I'm going to talk about what we were going to talk about on the show this week. And if you were paying attention on Facebook or Twitter, you knew that I was following this whole time wave zero thing. And let me just explain what that is to people who don't know. Time wave zero. Okay, back in the 70s, early 70s, there's this cat named Terence McKenna. And Terence likes to take substances that alter his consciousness. Things like ayahuasca, peyote, that sort of thing. Shamanic, ritual, hallucinogenic concoctions. And so he, that's a way of saying he liked to trip, but it wasn't more than that for him. He had contact with entities beyond this reality and had a view of reality beyond this reality. Basically, his spectrum was opened up. He got to see more of the big picture when he would do these things. And he said that during one of these experiences, he talked with an entity that he called Logos. And the entity told him to check out the original Chinese I Ching in order to determine a map of time or something to that effect. So Terence McKenna goes and he starts researching the I Ching and develops this whole mathematical system based on the I Ching that he says maps out time between, basically extending backward from December 21st, 2012. That was the end date that he set. And he said that he set this end date and came to it long before learning about the Mayan calendar and the Mayans having used that same date as the end date for their calendar. He said that this happened independently, and he for sure was definitely talking about this stuff before I was born. So before I was born, this cat, Terrence McKenna, was talking about December 21st, 2012. That's significant to me. And his whole system, you can actually map it out, and you can go online and find a time wave zero calculator and look at any particular month and see what it does. And basically what this map does is it maps out the amount of novelty in the human experience, or in the experience of our planet. And basically novelty being, something new, something big, something out of the ordinary, something that isn't just the mundane every day. And, it goes in cycles, and you get these huge dips in the chart, which correspond to increases in novelty, decreases in, normalcy. And we were supposed to get a very big one this past weekend, according to time wave zero. According to the calculator, if you set it for December 21st, whether or not you use if you go to the calculator, you can usually find two different guys' algorithms, but they all map out pretty much the same. And for this past weekend, using December 21st as the end date, there was definitely supposed to be something major happening between Sunday and Monday. And so that's what was supposed to happen, and that's what we were looking for. People were wondering if it was tied to this near-Earth asteroid that came by last week. Tolik raised the question about whether or not a cosmic event would come, and pointed to time wave zero. And we looked for it, we waited, and yesterday morning came, and it was just another day. And so it was supposed to happen, and it did not happen. But here's the deal. Right now, I'm looking at time wave zero and going, okay, well, that's bullshit. It's bullshit. Nothing happened. And I'm going to suspect that nothing will happen. But, I could be wrong. The thing is, there's this other option on the time wave zero calculators, setting the end date for December 23rd. And if you set the end date for December 23rd, well, that moves the event up 2 days. So actually it wouldn't happen until tomorrow, according to that end date. So if nothing happens over the next 3 days, then we all know time wave zero is a bunch of shit. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. I'm not going to be watching like I was this weekend for the world to change. But man, guys, wouldn't it be awesome if the world changed? Who's with me? Call me up, let me know. All right. What else is going on? Occupy is back in the house. Occupy, 1 year anniversary, man. And of course, on the anniversary, people show up. Oh, only about a couple hundred protesters. I saw the video. It's more than 200. But they say all the news reports in mainstream America were about 200 showed up. Yeah, well, that was yesterday. And since then, they've arrested that many. It seems the cops seem to be arresting everyone in sight. If there's even video from Luke from We Are Change, and if you don't know We Are Change, go check them out. And I think it's Luke We Are Change on Twitter. You can follow him there. But anyway, he's got video of one of the New York City council members getting roughed up by the cops. So that's cool, because we need Occupy. We need Occupy to come back into the fore. We need Occupy to occupy the conversation. And because I'm surprised that today's top story wasn't some stuff that Mitt Romney had said about Occupy. And I'm sure that if it didn't happen today, it'll happen tomorrow. He's going to have some derogatory thing to say about it, and it's going to launch. It's going to launch. The mitt will hit the fan when he does that. That's my prediction. And as for predictions, You guys know that, anybody who's couched in 2012 lore knows that one of the biggest prophecies for end times is a pole shift. That we know that it's happened. We know that it's happened regularly in the past. We know that it's been so severe that the tropics have ended up at the pole, and that animals that were in a tropical climate or a temperate climate ended up freezing to death because of the pole shift. We know it's happened. We can see it in the geological structure, the crystals pointing different ways, being formed in different epochs. Epochs? Spaces of time. Anyway, pole shift. We know Edgar Cayce predicted it, but the time that he predicted it for is come and gone. No, it was like by 1998, and it didn't happen. But it is happening. It's been happening. We've talked about it on the show, and Suspicious Observers on YouTube, the 2-minute news guy, has been talking about it quite a bit lately. And if you go check out the Suspicious Observers videos, you guys who have listened to the show know that I recommend subscribing. Just, it's a 2-minute thing each day, kind of lets you know what's up on your planet. But it really, the pole shift is quickening, and it's happening, and the pole shift's really happening. It's just happening slowly. David Wilcock has talked about it. Ra talked about it. So it's happening. It's happening slowly, and that's what we want. We don't want disaster. And I think, to me, the fact that the pole shift is happening, but it's happening so slowly that, it's like taking care of an egg. The Earth doesn't want to crack us. It doesn't want to. We don't have to have. It's evidence we don't have to have the catastrophic timeline. We can have a nice ease into the next age, and I think we should think about that and spend time thinking about that. What's up, Flip Side? She's got it on.
Sorry, I had to turn my phone back on.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to give you Flip Side. That's what you get for calling in. Okay, so let's talk about flu shots.
Let's talk about what?
Flu shots.
Okay.
Are you going to get a flu shot?
No.
No, I know I'm not getting a flu shot. Did you know that you have twice the risk of getting a pandemic flu if you actually get the shot? Twice as likely to get a pandemic flu as somebody who doesn't get the shot at all.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, I really think we need to rethink vaccines in our culture. Aside from the being linked to autism with the MMR, it's also true. This has also recently come out that vaccinated kids are chronically ill compared to kids who don't get the vaccinations. So the kids who are getting the vaccines for all these things that they're not supposed to get are actually chronically ill. They come up with chronic conditions, and we all know that the most profitable person in the healthcare system is one who's always in it. So, I don't know, healthcare system gives you shots, you end up always in the healthcare system. They end up making money, and they don't care what happens to you. That's that's what it looks like on the surface to me.
Well, but I think at the same time, my daughter is a perfect example of how that's not the case. She's rarely sick, and she's had all the vaccinations because I didn't, certain information just wasn't accessible to me about vaccinations until after I'd already fully vaccinated my kids.
Right.
And I have one that does have chronic health issues, but I have two that are pretty okay most of the time. So I think like with anything, it depends on who the person is.
Is that the flip side?
But I don't disagree that the healthcare system's fucking us, but I'm just saying.
Well, I think that, the kid's not sick. She's awesome. And vaccinated kids are chronically ill compared to unvaccinated kids. It's science. It's science. So you tell me which is better. I'm going with non-vaccinated. But, I understand why we have
I
that.
would have to see each study, so I know how many participants they had and what their sample was. And there's a whole lot of questions that kind of science creates for someone like me. That's why I'm called Flipside.
Yeah, but you don't need that because somebody on a radio show told you about it.
Well, maybe I just don't trust people.
I'm going to leave that one alone. So, craziness in the news. This week, a shark saved a man.
I haven't heard this story yet.
Yeah, a shark saved a man. This guy was lost at sea for like 100 days or 50 days or something crazy. Like, you can't go that long without water. You can only drink your pee before it goes away. And this guy's like brother-in-law was with him and died while they were out there, and he was wakened by something like bumping and scraping up against his boat, and this shark was like swimming around the boat, guiding it towards this other boat of rescuers. It must have been a decent-sized shark, but he credits his rescue to a shark.
Because he didn't have any fat to eat.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure Sharky was down there. And that's what it was. It was the Jack Black shark. Human are friends, not food.
Well,
that's just a weird story. You're not here. You don't hear about stuff like that happening. And in a world where I don't know, in a better world, sharks would save people instead of eating them, and that's awesome. Yeah.
Right?
What's the flip side on that? Come on, devil's advocate.
I'm not sure.
Come on, tell me how the sharks...
If sharks are going to start being nice to people, then Darwin is screwed.
Oh, the sharks don't need to eat people. They probably don't want us in their environment. They're like, you stink. Go away. You are full of chemicals. It's the same
get out of my house.
This actually goes a little bit in with the Michael Talbot interview. Not much, but you have to wonder how much of this story is attributable to his mindset and to the placebo effect. But I don't know if you were tuned in for the bit about the cancer patient that he was talking about.
Yeah, I was.
Okay. Well, in the news this week, a grandfather with incurable, quote, incurable cancer apparently just changed his diet, and he's living. He's lived. He lives. His cancer's, I don't know if it's completely gone, but I should probably read the story before I just talk about the headline. But anyway, there's a grandfather.
What are you, mainstream media?
Yeah, well. But I'm even if it is lame street media, at least it's positive stuff. And that's kind of the whole point of me cherry picking this story is, the same thing with the shark saves man. I try to find these good stories about good stuff going on out there and make sure that people know about that too. And it really kind of plays into the belief that a better world is coming, whether or not Time Wave Zero is bunk.
Amen.
They gave this guy credit for starting the New Age movement, but I didn't hear about him until like last week. So, I've been doing this seeking thing for quite a while without really running into him. So, I think if Time Wave Zero is bunk, it's not going to bother me at all.
Well, I just think you're not a real hippie.
I'm not a real hippie?
I'm teasing.
I haven't done ayahuasca yet. Something not... actually, this may prove to be a good story. On the surface, not good. QE3 happened this last week. The Federal Reserve issued its quantitative easing version 3. We've had QE1 and QE2, which a lot of people believe is just them printing more money and pumping it into the economy still backed on nothing and more or less just devaluing all money that we have. The dollar is crap. And quantitative easing 3, why do they keep doing this thing if it's not broke? If it's not fixing the system, if the system's still broken then this isn't doing the trick. In fact, this is the whole reason we got into this mess. Why do they keep doing it? Because it's all they got. They don't have anything else that they can do. So they're trying to fill the gaps with money, and eventually it's all going to fall apart.
Well, they're panicking. They know it's all about to crumble, so they're doing what most humans do. They're trying to avoid the situation and just put a Band-Aid over it.
Band-Aid's all they got.
Exactly. It'll eventually catch up with them. It always catches up with people.
Yeah. Yeah, because pretty soon that artery is going to be nicked. But I'm just ready for it to happen. So maybe the quantitative easing 3 is not such a bad thing. It's obviously just more the same, and I think it's indicative of what's really happening, because if really all you have to do is just keep throwing more money that you just made up at it, then you are obviously clueless or up against the ropes. And let's just get on with the show. Indications in the real world that things are really kind of on the brink. China. Aside from, do I even talk about this? Okay. First thing I'm going to talk about what I was just about to talk about. China is using their currency, the yuan, whatever it is.
I thought it was yuan.
No, this is the yuan. Is it pronounced yen? I'm pretty sure yen is yen.
No, you're wrong. I
think this is a separate currency. Anyway, they're using this currency to sell oil instead of the dollar. The dollar has been the standard currency in the oil trade since, the 40s probably. I'm not sure when that happened, but the dollar has been the standard currency for all oil trade. And China's and I believe they're not the first country to go off the dollar in this, but for China to do it is significant. Now, in this other story, this was on Veterans Today, which, really is a respectable blog, or, it's kind of an alternative news source, Veterans Today. You'll find some 9/11 truth on that site. But today they published a story about the American and Chinese navies currently working together, the American and Chinese navies working together currently to fend off aliens, according to Carrie Cassidy. Carrie Cassidy was the source. And I think when you're using Carrie Cassidy as a source, first of all, she's supposed to be a journalist, not a source. And she's Carrie Cassidy, which, maybe she's brought some very important information to light through the people that she's interviewing, but her interviews, her questions, her way of dealing with people, Carrie Cassidy is very suspect, and I don't appreciate her. I don't.
Right. Remind me who she is. Is she the
Project Camelot?
Yeah. Is that who that is?
Yeah. Remember the interview that I was watching?
No, I know who you're talking about now. I just wanted to orient my brain.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm no fan of hers, but
right.
I just thought it was weird. Here's this on Veterans Today. I should go find that and put that on the site. I almost didn't talk about that, and I don't know why I am, because really, that's an article. The American and Chinese navies are working together to fend off UFOs right now. Then again, maybe it's true. But, here we have Mitt and Barack going back and forth, trading barbs about who's tough on China, who's not tough enough on China. China's over there going, Mitt Romney might want to shut the fuck up, or he might want to shut the fuck up. China's actually saying that what he's doing is irresponsible, and he might want to watch his ass. And our militaries are working together to fight off an alien invasion. Okay.
Well, I don't know. It doesn't seem so far off to me.
Well,
I mean, I'm not saying it's valid at all. I have no clue. I've not even heard this story.
In my view,
my point is, our government does things all the time that we don't know about.
No, you're right. Now you're doing the flip side of me, because I'm trying to be realistic here. When normally, yeah, I'd probably be like, "Oh, dude, did you hear?" But just posting headlines bites me in the ass these days. No, but I don't know. If it's true, then I gotta personally believe that it's not a hostile alien invasion, and that if they are actually cooperating together to fight an alien presence, that alien presence would actually be the people that we want to have come here, and the people who are fighting them are the people we need to go away. And it's the cabal, and the top darkest parts of our global structure trying to take one last gasp. Maybe if that's true, if it's actually happening, I see that being the likely candidate, as opposed to oh yeah, we're just secretly getting together with our, this enemy that we're saber rattling with currently, and we're gonna fight off this horde of evil reptilian aliens. It's bullshit. That's not what's happening. Just saying. So after it all comes down and everything is, 2012 is all over and it's all gone down the way it's going to go down, and everybody knows everything about what happened, we'll look back at this and be like, yeah, we had no idea. Because you're probably right.
I don't think we ever have an idea.
Well, you're probably right. There's probably so much going on that, even those of us who think
even earlier when you were talking about the timeline and all of that and how nothing major happened. Well, nothing major happened that you know about or that you defined as major.
Yeah, well, but it's novelty to the Earth as a whole, and I am a part of the Earth as a whole, and I'm plugged into the Earth as a whole, and nothing major happened. We're talking novelty, swinging novelty for the entire planet, not just for an individual who has a traumatic event or, somebody, has something personal happen to them. Well, this is a societal, as a whole type of thing is what it's supposed to be. And we're talking like the beginning of wars and stuff like that are marked by these pronounced slides in novelty, or I guess increases in novelty, but slides in normalcy, according to Time Wave Zero. I don't know. Oh, check it out. Area code 619. What's up? Who we got?
Hey, what's up? My name is Alan.
Alan?
Yes, sir.
What's up, brother?
How you doing, home slice?
So what do you think about all this craziness? What do you got to say?
Oh, you were just talking about the Time Wave Zero thing, right?
Yeah, we were back on Time Wave Zero. What do you think?
Dude, that thing's elastic. It's never on to date. Right before 9/11, what was it? Like a week prior to, there was a novelty spike, or it went down for a bit. You there?
Is this Alf Alan?
Yes, hello.
Okay, all right. Now I got you, brother. All right, cool. Hey, it's good to talk to you.
It's good to talk to you. I had to take a break from my wife for a little bit.
Oh.
She's too pretty. I had to step away from the beautifulness.
Oh, I was going to say, just so we're clear, this lovely lady on the other side is my little lady.
Hello, little lady.
So yeah, because I remember we talked about that on Twitter because I didn't think that the time that September 11th had really hit. I'd looked at that month and it didn't look like what I would expect 9/11 to look like.
Yeah, I was reading more into that, and those people's explanation was that the novelty drop was like a psychic sign. Like all these psychics were getting a sign that it was happening like a week prior to, and they were calling in, and that was the novelty drop. They were just getting like a psychic sign that it was about to happen. Yeah, and it was like about a week prior to 9/11 or something.
Well, it would be interesting to know if that lined up with the December 21st or December 23rd timeline.
Yeah.
Oh, and I guess by that same reasoning, we could have had something happening this weekend that actually hasn't occurred yet.
Yeah, or something happened and we haven't heard about it yet on the news. I don't know.
That's what I was saying.
Like maybe the Chinese and American militaries fighting off an alien horde.
Oh my God, that'd be awesome. I mean, the only thing that I read lately is China is about to start dropping all the bonds and all the Japanese bonds. Pretty much
is that a Fulford? Where are you hearing that?
It was from, I'll send you a link later, but it was from like I think it was the Washington Post where I read it.
Oh.
Yeah, but it was like one of their inside traders or something. I'll send you a link, but they were talking about trying to take away all the bonds from Japan, pretty much as a retaliatory, just to be jerks, I guess.
I wonder if that has anything to do with Japan's finance minister offing himself this week.
Yeah, the reason that happened is because they just blatantly took those islands over there. I forgot the name of the islands over there. But Japan just pretty much said, nope, they're ours. China that is dishonorable, and took it back. Started attacking.
That is dishonorable.
Pretty much.
Well, so all we need is another freaking war.
Oh. I don't know. We're now at AA negative. The Fed's going to print out $40 billion a month. The first round of that
until they decide that it's actually working. That's the beautiful part. That's the best part of this whole QE3 thing. Is that the Fed says, yeah, we're going to do this, and actually we're going to do it every month until we decide it's working and that we can stop. So,
well, it didn't work the last quarter.
This is our monthly budget. We'll always have money. Yay!
It's not going to work. They're not going to stop till 2015. They already said that. And I used to be a finance technician in the United States Marine Corps, and I know for a fact that when they say something like that, that means they're not going to stop printing money till 2015. Common sense shows money is obviously not going to be worth as much 2015. The time to sell is now.
No.
You know?
That's an awful lot of common sense, though. I don't know if that's been put into the equation. But we do have good news. I mean, quantitative easing free, and you know what? Actually, I still think that if it does wreck the economy, that's the best thing we could have happen.
Oh yeah.
But of the concerns that we have, and it's kind of related to the rise of Occupy, the revised version of Occupy, whatever it's going to be. We had the NDAA signed last year by Barack Obama, including the indefinite detention provision. There was language in there allowing for the indefinite detention of American citizens. But Barack had a signing statement declaring that his government wouldn't use it. His administration wouldn't use it. But he went ahead and signed it so that the next one could. Well, a federal judge this week struck down that portion of the NDAA. So the whole indefinite detention provision is now in the system. It's been struck down. It's temporarily a moot point, but that's going to get appealed. But the fact that very thing is now in the system, it's on its way to the Supreme Court, and we don't really have to worry about it until the Supreme Court decides it. So
I thought the ban was lifted this afternoon. Yeah, didn't Obama and his lawyers, they already lifted the ban.
What?
Yeah, they lifted the ban already. It was on RT, I believe, like about 2 hours ago. Photographic Memory?
I don't think it was a ban. I heard it was struck.
No, they put a ban on it, and their lawyers lifted the ban immediately. They want those powers. That's terrifying.
Well, I'm not afraid.
Not for me.
But
terrifying for them.
See, I think it's enlightening. I think it really shows the obviousness, between the Patriot Act and this kind of crap. I mean, look, people aren't going to stay complacent forever. And you keep doing stuff this obvious, you're going to have a problem on your hands. You're going to have a few million problems on your hands.
Here's another big problem. The NDAA pretty much says it draws its powers from the Patriot Act. So it kind of makes it seem like the Patriot Act was drawn so the NDAA could be drawn. That's just me thinking.
So let me ask you something. I'm going to do a chemtrail check. And actually, we're a few minutes over, so I'm just going to kind of probably close it up here after this. But I think it's important to do a chemtrail check. Since you're called in, have you seen many lately? Have you seen them today?
Yeah, there were some here today, San Diego. And we noticed they always come by like through 32nd Street. That's the naval base downtown San Diego. And they always go north from there.
Huh.
Yeah, and the only other base over there is Camp Pendleton, so I don't see why that would happen.
Well, I know some discussion over on the Facebook page. Our buddy Trevor was saying, he's down in Oklahoma, he was saying that he hadn't seen any in a while. And so I was just wanting to check. I know I've seen them intermittently here in Kansas. Not really bad, though. I mean, they'll do like one day. Like last Wednesday, and we had band practice, and the boys were pulling their stuff into the, we were getting ready to have practice, and they were spamming the sky pretty good, and then like 2 hours later it stormed. So, yeah.
There were some earlier today, but I did notice it was blank for a while. We got a heat wave during that time, though.
How hot you get?
It was in the triple digits. Real humid. I think it was 105 in like not Santee, La Jolla or something.
Holy crap.
I believe we broke a record 2 days ago.
Holy crap.
You should, check out the HARP status also. It's going nuts right now over by the volcano.
I don't think we hit 70 here in the middle of the country.
I'm done with San Diego weather. It's too humid. I'm going to go back to Arizona. I need 12 more credits so I can start my bounty hunting. And whenever those warrants come out on those...
You're really going to do that, huh?
Hell yeah. I'm done. I'm bored.
Alan's going after the bankers. You bastards better watch out because he's coming for your ass.
Yeah, it happened in Iceland when their bankers wanted to make all their citizens pay. They're like, hell no, put out warrants for every single banker and one bounty hunter. Got all the bounty hunters in all Iceland and got them all.
Really?
Yes, sir. He got rich, too.
Well, you talked about it, and then you said you, got the process started. You're really going to fucking do it.
I hope there's some warrants out soon. I need some money.
Yeah. Send Ben a note. Be like, hey, let me know where to go get them.
Yeah, I hope they don't get me before I get them, though. You know how they've been taking away all the Marines and veterans lately.
Yeah, well, I think it's definitely going to be a very interesting ride between now and the end of the year. And I also believe that no matter what happens to whomever, that life goes on, and when everything is said and done, everything will happen the way it was supposed to happen. And death isn't something I fear, especially considering the alternative. If it's a world of if they are to stay in power, and they achieve their world government and succeed in dumbing down mankind and just keeping us as slaves and under their heel, I don't want any part of that. I would much rather be free of them. And we are all free. We just have to make that choice. And I think that, there's a lot of evidence. People are waking up. And collectively, we're just going to get together and be like, no, that's not the world we're going to live in. You aren't going to do this to us anymore.
I completely agree.
Yeah, you just
but I also agree. I mean, have you noticed in the other countries, they're rioting hard. And we're pretty oppressed, or not as oppressed as them. I mean, we're pretty comfortable in comparison, too. But no one's protesting here the way they're protesting everywhere else.
That's true. And we've been saying that for a while now. Even with Occupy, nobody's doing it like they do it over there. But look, we're in America. If there's any country that, you know, probably shouldn't bitch as much as the other countries, it's probably us.
It's very comfortable here, let me tell you. Whew. I mean, I'm like in the bottom, like the very bottom, like very poor percent, but I mean, I'm much more comfortable than I was off in Mexico. I was born in Mexico. Dear God.
Y aquí es mejor.
What was that? I'm sorry.
Y aquí es mejor.
Mucho más mejor aquí. Oh,
yeah, no,
God.
We actually got to go down to Mexico this year, and as somebody who's, you know, I grew up learning Spanish in school and stuff, and just having an opportunity to actually use it was cool.
Yeah. I tend to notice that when I speak Spanish for a while, I forget how to speak English a couple of days later. My accent gets real bad.
Yeah, that's probably not going to happen to me. All right, well, any parting thoughts? Any shots of hope real quick before we go?
The lights turn off for any reason, and don't worry about it. It's a good thing.
Yeah, basically.
I agree.
We're ready for the end to begin.
Well, the way I see it is, if the lights ever do turn off, I'm just going to start walking, and considering the way the regular status quo is, I know that everyone's going to start following just because they don't know what else to do.
Well, weren't you talking about getting a horse and riding off?
Oh, yeah, I need a horse. That's why I'm moving to Arizona, because I can't have a horse in San Diego. Not in the city, really. Arizona land is much cheaper here.
I've got enough dried beans from our garden this year to make half a meal, so I think we're going to be okay.
Sweet. We have a good
insist on fucking jalapenos, because that's the only thing our garden seems to be really good at growing.
Get some manure, man. Get some guano. Guano's magic.
Guano? Oh yeah? for the soil?
Bat poo.
What are you putting on the garden, Dad? Michelle Bachman.
I think that's why it's not growing.
That was mean. I'm mostly sorry. All right, but we're gonna go. If I can find my. Tell you what, man. All those audio clips from the interview earlier, I can't find anything to save my life. But we are at the end. So, you know, thanks for calling in, brother. Honey.
Yeah, no problemo. I had to drink some coffee.
No bedtime soon for you, huh?
Oh, no.
Well, I think we'll probably be heading here in a bit. But that's it for us. Facebook.com/Extraordinary Year. Go like us there. And that's it. 93rd day before December 21st, 2012. Keep your ear to the ground. Hold on tight, kids. It's going to be an extraordinary year. Peace is on the way. Namaste.
So I'll say what I feel today. Might make you uneasy, put you in a rage.